Same problems, new season. Let's get into it today on Locked On A's.
You are Locked On A's, your daily podcast on the Athletics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your host, Booney. Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen of the day. I am from the Bay Area, and I've been a diehard A's fan since 1981. I'm here to bring you a real fan's take, covering everything from Sacramento to Las Vegas. This is the place for A's fans to get the latest game breakdowns, team news, and more. This is where the passion of the fans takes center stage. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. And please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button wherever you are following the show. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. I got a listener email yesterday from Dexter, who said my can of corn segment was way too long. Dexter, I agree with you. Way too long. Now, let me give you a little background on that. When I heard the can of corn story behind it growing up, it's become like second nature for me, doing something simple as serving a guest a drink or a cocktail or whatever it may be. They say, "You're welcome." I say, "Hey, can of corn." So anything that really has been routine or simple, can of corn. So that's why I went a little long on that segment. It was selfish. It was a segment more for me, but I regress. Yesterday's game, as today's game, will not be televised. Yesterday's was not televised. Today will not be televised. Extremely frustrating. So I have gone and found out the schedule for televised games this year, and I will pass that along to you at the end of the show. The A's have some issues we're going to get into today. And yes, I know you're going to tell me it's only spring training. You're right. I get it. It is. It is only spring training. Here's the issue, though. There were concerns last year. There were concerns in the off season. I have dedicated shows to these concerns. And yes, they are concerns early in the spring. They have reappeared. So, yeah, I get it's spring training argument, excuse me. You are absolutely right, and that is the positive part. It is. We are only 3 games into spring training with 27 games left. There are a lot to improve. This is why we have spring training, but this isn't anything new. And we will get into that in just a bit. First, let's review yesterday's game against the Royals. So the A's opened up their third spring training game with their most interesting news of the spring, which is Tyler Soderstrom as a starting catcher, which I thought was huge. The A's just simply giving him an opportunity to catch tells you a lot. It tells you that, yes, if he can do it, it is a possibility that he can be named the backup catcher, thus freeing up a roster spot for somebody else. Or it could mean, hey, we just have Soderstrom as an emergency third catcher. It could mean a number of things. I think really that only comes into fruition as excuse me, if Soderstrom is to be announced as the backup catcher, is if there is another prospect like a Colby Thomas, let's say, who you just simply cannot leave off the opening day roster. They have had such a big spring training where it's like, hey, we got to make room for him. That has not held true so far. So, but, it is a good sign. On top of that, CJ Alexander, normally a third baseman, got the start at first base yesterday, which again reaffirms the point of Soderstrom possibly being a catcher and freeing up a roster spot for somebody like a CJ Alexander. Who knows? A lot of things have to happen. And like I said earlier, we are still very, very, very early in the spring. Osvaldo Bido got the start on the mound and seeing if he can keep the momentum he had in the second half of last year. For me personally, I thought it was a huge start. It says a lot. Is he the same guy we saw last year, or was it just a fluke? Top of the first inning, the Law Dog leads off the game with what the Law Dog does. Hard single to center field, which makes him 3 for 4 for spring training so far. Pretty darn good, and reaffirms everything we thought of Lawrence Butler from last year and going into this year. Great news. Jacob Wilson, again, in the 2-hole like he was in the opening day of spring training, popped out, and he remains hitless so far for the spring, which isn't a major concern. But yeah, infield has been a concern for me. I talked about it in the offseason. We will get into that later. Lawrence Butler attempted to steal second and had the throw beat, but overran the bag and was actually tagged out. Soderstrom grounded out weakly, which ended the top of the first. In Bido's debut for his spring, he allowed a single. He walked the batter, was able to get out of it unscathed, but did throw a lot of pitches, which was a concern last year as far as his efficiency. To start the top of the second, Luis Urias, who we picked up about 10 days ago as a free agent, had a very impressive 10-pitch at bat and earned a walk to lead off the top half. I love Urias. Veteran bat, veteran presence, can play third, can play second, can play short. Considering the inexperience of our infield right now, Urias is invaluable. Gelof came up next, struck out, which has been a reoccurring theme from last year, in which he led the American League in strikeouts. His start to spring training has not been promising. After his first at bat, 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. CJ Alexander came up. I have talked about CJ Alexander throughout the offseason as one of my dark horses to make the team. I love CJ Alexander and what he brings. He came up, raked a base hit to left center. With first and second and 1 out, Estuary Ruiz and Daryl Hernaiz were retired. I have stated for a long time that Hernaiz is not the guy. And he has now started the spring after this at bat 0 for 5. For me, for people, so-called beat writers covering the A's ever to consider Daryl Hernaiz over a guy like Max Schumann was just a disservice. That was just an absolute joke take. It comes from people just looking at the analytics, your high-level stats, and not watching the games. And again, it shows right now through the early going of spring that Hernaiz is having some problems. You cannot just depend on your advanced analytics without watching the player play. Drives me nuts. Bido came back in the second and struck out the side. Bido was impressive in his spring training debut. He struck out 4, 1 hit, 1 walk. Now, like I mentioned earlier, he needs to get more efficient. He threw 46 pitches in his first 2 innings. One of the A's top prospects that we have been talking about, Colby Thomas, led off the third with an absolute shot that I thought was going to go out of the ballpark, but was reeled in at the wall. The game remains scoreless going into the bottom of the third, and with new pitcher Hogan Harris, who has been one of my favorites, he struggled as he walked 2 and had a wild pitch. But as he did last year, Harris fought, and this is what I have always loved about Hogan Harris. With second and third and 1 out, he retired the next 2 batters, getting out of the inning unscathed. Hogan did the same in the fourth. He allowed a double and walked a batter, and again with runners on second and third, this time with 2 outs, bared down and was able to get out of the inning. Harris's spring has begun much as his 2024 season. A lot of traffic, but was able to get out of it. 2 innings, 1 hit, 3 walks, 2 Ks, and the key number, 0 runs. But Harris needs to get those walks under control. He had an issue in Philadelphia last year. Same type of outing. 3 innings, 6 walks. C.J. Alexander led off the 5th. And again, like I said, he is looking extremely impressive. He hit an absolute shot to the second baseman. Got robbed on an incredible play and was retired, or he would have had his second hit of the day. Every time Alexander gets up to the plate, it feels like he's going to hit the ball hard somewhere. Tyler Ferguson was the next on the mound, who arguably was our second or maybe third best reliever last year. He was actually our closer when Mason Miller was hurt and did a great job. Earned a couple saves, shut down the opposition when he needed to, was very, very effective out of the bullpen last year. A lot of optimism going for him into this year, and this was his first appearance this spring. Unfortunately, the first batter he met this spring was Kevin Biggio, who greeted Ferguson with a home run, giving the Royals a 1-0 lead. Ferguson went on to walk 2 more batters in the inning before eventually getting out of it with the sole home run as his only run. But again, walks are a concern. They were a concern last year out of the bullpen, out of starting pitchers, and they are a concern this year. They walked 8 batters in the first game of spring training. They walked 4 batters in the second game of spring training. And yesterday, they walked 9 batters. That needs to get under control. For as impressive as the pitching has been with regard to runs allowed, we are not going to last long if we continue to walk 4, 5, 8, 9 batters in a game. And again, yes, I understand it's spring training. That's the positive part. But this is something that happened last year. It needs to get under control. It needs to get fixed. Lawrence Butler, the law dog, led off the 6th with, yes, yet another base hit. Lawrence Butler, 2 for 3 in his first game, 2 for 3 in his second game, 4 for 6. You guessed it. He's batting .667. I love this about the law dog. This is such a positive sign from one of our big sticks and somebody who we really need to perform this year. With the runner at first base, Jacob Wilson came up, grounded out, ended his day with an 0 for 3 performance, bringing him to 0 for 6 for the year. Again, spring training, I get it. With first and second and 2 outs, this brought up Luis Urias, who has had a very nice day. He had a great 10-pitch at bat in his first appearance and walked. He crushed a ball in his second at bat, but was retired. And in a 2-out RBI situation in his third at bat, Urias sharply hitting a ground ball between shortstop and third base into left field, scoring Henry Bolte and tying the game at 1. Big 2-out knock from a veteran like Urias. With the score tied at 1, going into the bottom of the 6th, another one of last year's top relievers, Michel Otañez, comes into the game. And yes, you guessed it, walks the leadoff batter. Otañez then throws a wild pitch. He strikes out the next batter, allows a stolen base, and yes, walks yet another batter for a total of 8 free passes. Otañez gets out of the bases loaded jam by striking out the final hitter, but not before walking another batter. And as I mentioned, 9 walks for the A's. Very interesting outing for Otañez. Walk, strikeout, walk, strikeout, walk, strikeout. With the game tied at 1 going into the 7th, the next 3 innings were quiet. Grant Holman did come in the 7th inning, allowing 2 hits, and you could have easily given an error to Brett Harris at third on an errant throw on one of the hits that may have easily been scored an error. But with first and second and 2 outs, Holman was able to pitch himself out of the inning and get out of there with no runs allowed. The A's only threat really came in the top of the 8th with first and second with 2 outs. But unfortunately, Max Muncy, one of our top prospects, did strike out, ending the threat. Gunnar Hoglund came in the bottom of the 9th, 2019 first-round pick, who came over in the Matt Chapman trade with Toronto, pitched a perfect 9th, which was a very, very good sign. The final score ended up being a 1-1 tie, as spring training games do not go to extra innings. Not the most eventful games, but what wasn't uneventful was a lot of problems. That was a point of concern last year, a point of concern in the offseason, and again, a point of concern this spring training are beginning to reappear. Let's cover those up next. This episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. For much of the spring, I have talked about our infield. And for as much potential as our infield does have, it is very young and it is unproven. I have stated for the need to get additional infielders in case our prospects don't work out. On top of that, one of my main concerns was second base, Zack Gelof, and the year he had last year, leading the American League in strikeouts. For the most part, the A's addressed those issues. I was happy with the Urshela pickup. I liked the Luis Urias pickup. I loved the CJ Alexander pickup. But And again, I understand we are early in spring training. I'm with you. But my concerns isn't something that we have not spoken about before in the offseason. It isn't something that I have not emphasized. It's been there. It's glaring. We need our infield to produce in order to be competitive next year. Our most efficient infielder last year was Max Schumann, who was unbelievable, which drives me nuts again on why individuals would have him, or excuse me, so-called media outlets or those who cover the team would have him so easily replaced. But I regress. Zack Gelof has started off the spring 0 for 6 with 5 strikeouts. Is this something where it's possibly getting into his head? Yes, no question about it. Brett Harris, 0 for 3. Daryl Hernandez, 0 for 6. Tyler Soderstrom, 1 for 4. Gio Urshela, 0 for 2. Our proposed starting infield going into this campaign has started off spring training 1 of 18. And my biggest concern is, yes, Zack Gelof. Zack Gelof had a huge 2023 and regressed incredibly in 2024. We need Zack Gelof to contribute. And right now, as it stands, if he continues this pace where he is not getting better or showing signs of improvement from last year, I don't see him making the opening day roster. I don't know how you can. Which bothers me. Our most positive infielder right now has been CJ Alexander. I mean, he's 2 for 4 in 3 games. He has a walk. He's hit the ball hard practically every single time. He looks impressive. Soderstrom hasn't been bad. 1 for 4. He has our only hit from the proposed infield. But yeah, it is a concern. Jacob Wilson, 0 for 6. I get it. Spring training. These kids are young. No question about it. But they're also proposed to be starters. And Jacob Wilson didn't have the best go of it when he got called back up after he was initially hurt last year either. A lot of time. 27 games left in the spring. There's no question that this can get turned around. It is early, but 3 games in, it is something to think about. There is no question about it. The other issue is the other prospects aren't doing much either. Max Muncy, 2 games, 0 for 3. Nick Kurtz, 0 for 3 with 2 walks. Max Schumann played 1 game, does what Max Schumann does. He has not earned an at-bat, just 2 walks. I talked about Hernandez and Brett Harris as well. Let's get into our outfielders. The outfielders we have really had our eye on going into the offseason is Lawrence Butler, seeing if he can continue his momentum from last year, and he hasn't disappointed. 4 for 6 with a double, a home run, has been 100% on fire. Estuary Ruiz, right? We're seeing where he was coming in from being hurt last year. 0 for 5, not the best of starts. Henry Bolte, very, very young, on the 60-day roster. 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts. Colby Thomas, 0 for 4, 2 walks. He did hit a ball very hard yesterday, almost hit it out of the ballpark. So, not a whole lot there. Denzel Clark, 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts. So the concerns going into spring training about some of these younger players, bat-to-ball contact is a theme early in spring training as well. Another big concern for the A's going into spring training was pitching. And yes, they have been very effective the last couple games. But a big theme from last year going into this year is based on balls. We got to get that under control. Ryan Cusick, who we received in the Matt Olson trade, 2021 first rounder, 1 game, 1 inning pitched, 3 walks. Didn't allow any runs, but again, 3 walks. Tyler Ferguson, yesterday's appearance, 2 walks in 1 inning. Hogan Harris, 2 innings pitched yesterday, 3 walks. Michelle Otanez, 1 inning, 3 walks. Jason Alexander, 2 walks in 1 inning. One thing I want you to remember with regard to A's pitching and this spring, we still have 12 pitchers that have not appeared this spring. So these pitchers that are trying to earn roster spots, it's not exactly a situation where they are going to be given a ton of opportunities to get out there and prove themselves. Every opportunity they get is golden, and they need to perform. So again, to the theme of this whole episode, yes, it's early in spring training. And if this was a standalone issue from last year, that argument has a little bit more, a little bit more power to it. But concerning that this is all we've talked about in the offseason, this is what was the issue last year, and it is again reoccurring now. It's something we got to bring up. And I assume and I know it will get better, and we will see that. And speaking of what we will see, is not a whole lot of games televised, which is unfortunate. Yesterday was not televised. Today will not be televised. Tomorrow will be televised. So let me tell you what I did, guys. I went on and I bought the MLB package. It's like $7 a month for all spring training games. My hope was to get all the A's games, and that's not the case. Let me tell you exactly what I show the A's as being scheduled to be televised on MLB Network. Again, you may want to check this out on your own. Maybe they add a game or whatever it may be. Don't take my word for it, but this is what I have found out. They will be televised tomorrow, February 26th against the Mariners, March 1st against the Angels, March 11th against the Giants, March 12th against the D-backs, March 16th against the Giants, March 19th against the Guardians, March 22nd against the Brewers, March 24th against the White Sox. So not a whole lot of games. I have been listening to them on the radio if they are not televised, but big difference, right? They face off against the Giants today, and I don't care what day of the week it is. I don't care if it's spring training, winter ball, fall ball, regular season ball, playoff ball. I want to beat the Giants. JP Sears is on the hill today. Mitch Spence will be starting tomorrow. So yes, it's going to give us an opportunity to see them and see what they bring to the table. And I'm hoping our bats wake up. We have scored a total of 4 runs. Has it been? No, more than that. We have scored a total of 8 runs. Sorry, in 3 games. 8 runs in 3 games. Lost 10-3 to the Padres in game 1. Tied 1-1 yesterday and against the Royals, and beat the Rockies 4-0, which brings the A's record to 1-1-1. We will see what happens today. 12:05 first pitch. JP Sears against Robbie Ray. Should be exciting. I'll be listening to it. I hope you guys tune in as well. And we'll be back tomorrow to cover everything A's and see what has improved and what has gotten better. Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the off season. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Jacob Wilson, 0 for 6.